Hey, I'm Nick.
And I'm Allie.
And this is But Have You Tried from the David A. Howe Public Library. I found some cool things on the side of the road recently.
Oh, yeah?
I found an old school TV VCR combo. We dragged it home, plugged it in, it worked perfectly. Popped in Star Trek the Motion Picture. It was like transporting back in time.
That's incredible.
You know what else I found on the side of the road? A library book that has been checked out for 6 years.
Oof.
So it was just in a pile of free books, and I was like, I recognize those markings. I brought it here, scanned it back in, popped it back on the shelf as if it were never gone.
Huh.
It was also a YA book, so
had we replaced
one of your
it
people.
in the intervening 6 years?
We hadn't.
Huh. Well, I mean, that predates my time at this library. So.
That's true. So blame Eric Nichols if you have a problem
Sorry,
with
Eric,
that book.
to throw you under the bus, but
yeah, you really did. How you hanging in there? Because I know, you're like a fastidious little plant. You know what I mean? If you don't have direct sunlight on you, you're just.
Yeah. We haven't scientifically proven that my blood is chlorophyll instead of actual blood.
Though?
But
haven't all signs point to chlorophyll?
It's like. Yeah, it's been kind of cold and kind of dark. I'm wearing my little fingerless glove situation while we're recording this. Yesterday, I wore 5 layers.
Ridiculous.
To this building.
Ridiculous.
Was I warm? No.
You came back in your giant purple grimace coat.
Yes.
With a beanie, multiple sweaters.
Multiple sweaters.
Pants.
So many sweaters. I was also wearing leggings under my pants.
Okay. All right.
And that wasn't enough.
Well, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm failing you comfort-wise.
I don't really know what there is to be done, though. I
don't either.
Besides,
I'm not sure.
I mean, I guess I could just.
I guess you need to
have
a thermos of a nice vegetable broth.
That actually sounds nice.
Walking around, you could just take a hit off it, to warm yourself up. That's the only thing I can think of, honestly. I really.
Or like some miso soup.
Just
a little cup of miso soup.
Perfect. And I love how you tied it right back into the podcast. That's great. We have to give a special shout out to the entire community.
Absolutely.
Because we had our budget vote over on the school ballot this year, and it passed with an overwhelming majority. Mm-hmm. So it's really nice to see that kind of support. And I'm excited about what this frees us up to do in the future. 2026 is going to be our year.
Oh, yeah.
So pretty exciting. So thank you, everybody who went out to vote. And even people who didn't go out to vote but still support the library. We see you. We appreciate it.
We appreciate you a lot.
You know what? Shout out to the Grumps as well. You know what? You're doing your own thing, and God bless you.
You gotta respect it.
Our doors are always open, so come on in.
That's true.
We'll point you in the right direction.
You can grump here anytime.
You can. Yeah, we don't care. Go ahead. We got some grumps who come in. That's fine.
That's true. Yeah, we don't judge.
It's fine. Get cozy. Read your newspapers. Do what you do.
Yeah.
Boy, speaking of reading things, that was my assignment this time. You assigned me Edna St. Vincent Millay.
Yes.
And it was like I was hearing every word of that for the first time. Didn't know what it was. I should have known that it was a poet from the turn of the century, and I have done so. So you assigned me to read selections from the books. A Few Figs from Thistles. A Few Figs from Thistles.
Yes.
Wine from These Grapes. Those were my main assignments. I also read in entirety the collection Second April.
Oh, okay.
Have
That's
you read
my
that
other
one?
favorite.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah, so I read A Few Figs from Thistles. I read the whole thing shortly after we recorded the bookshelf episode because I had it here and I was just like, I'm going to get a head start on this.
And I think that is the shortest one. It's an easy, quick.
Yeah, it went pretty fast.
Range.
And then I was like, I should read more of that, but I left Wine from These Grapes at my desk, and so I looked to see what was available on Libby, and 2nd April was there.
Oh, well, perfect, because that's the other one that I wanted to assign you, but I didn't think we had it in the collection.
Oh, okay.
So.
Yeah, actually, I don't think we do, but it was on Libby.
But it's on Libby, so that works out perfectly.
So I read it that way. And then I did read selections from Wine from These Grapes as well. I have some facts about our friend Edna St. Vincent Millay, but I would like to know, before I dive into that, how you came across this poet.
Sure, right. I think the earliest knowledge I have of this poet is from the poem Recuerdo, which I think is in one of those collections. It's the We Were Very Tired, We Were Very Merry one.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And I feel like that's one that's more commonly known. Like, you might not know Edna St. Vincent Millay, but you might know that poem. And I came across that poem. I don't remember how. I think it's one that like someone in my family knew and had referenced, and I don't know. I'd read it or something, and I enjoyed it. And then there was another one of hers that I'd also come across sometime after, which is God's World. I don't think that's in one of the ones that you read, but I could be misremembering. And that one is really just like it's, I don't know, it's very much talking about like the beauty of nature and how sometimes you're outside looking at stuff and it's so overwhelming how amazing it is. And I really resonated with that because I love being outdoors. More reasons why I'm just a plant.
Yeah.
We're just revealing this fact. And so then when I was in college, I was like, I really like these like handful of poems by this poet that I've read. What if I read more? So
what if?
What if?
Dare we ask the
question?
question?
So I was in the Houghton Library and I looked up where her poetry was. And I think Wine from These Grapes was the first volume of her poetry that I was like, I'm going to check this out on a whim and read it in between classes. Because, man, I just had to add a little extra nerd to my nerd. You know what I mean? And so I read selections from that and I really enjoyed it. And so there were quite a few volumes of poetry there. So I would just kind of check them out and read them as my like little, I don't know, mental refresh.
Yeah.
And that's really how I got into this whole poetry sphere.
I think it's funny that you spent so much time in the Willard J. Houghton Library because I worked there for 7 years and we never overlapped at all because I was, a full-grown adult and you were a baby. No, not really.
No, I was
started there when I was 26 and that was a long time. It was like 16 years ago. How old were you 16 years ago? 8 or 9?
Yes.
Yeah.
9. I think I should have been 9.
Yeah, okay. That's right. Yeah, so we didn't overlap, but I probably shelved that book.
Well, I remember sometimes I would be there like as a kid with my like family or whatever, like checking out books or like hanging around, waiting for dad or whatever. And like I would see you there, so I knew you existed.
Right.
But like I was
like,
a child.
Who's this cool person and all these stuffy people around him? Yeah. Okay. Well, my introduction to this was when you said it and I was hearing it all for the first time. So,
makes sense.
So let me give you a little background on our friend Edna St. Vincent Millay, born in 1892, died in 1950, so not the longest of lives. She also wrote under the pen name Nancy Boyd. She was the first woman to win the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. She was awarded for her poem Ballad of the Harp Weevil in 1932. She entered a poetry contest at the age of 20, and this is kind of how her career kicked off a little bit. And there's like scandal behind this, right? So she enters this contest. All the judges are sort of independently reviewing these things. The financial backer of the contest, like the one who was like, let's do a contest, wrote her a letter and was like, congratulations, you won. And then the other judges were like, no, she didn't.
Oop.
We've already like deliberated on this. And she was chosen as the 4th place winner.
Okay.
So then this set off a whole thing because she was, already declared the winner and they had to like run that back. Then there was a whole thing that like there was 3 old men who came in ahead of her. And so they were kind of like, this feels kind of sexist, like you're giving her this little prize here. So then it became this thing where the winner, Oric Gendry Johns, was like, actually, I mean, her poem was better. I don't think this is really fair. And so he would not go to the award ceremony. And they changed things so that she came in second. So, it was a whole to-do.
Wow.
But the notoriety of this was like good for her and bad for Johns, who was the actual winner. Like he was getting hate mail and stuff, and everybody was like, she's cool. And then Carolyn Dow, who was a patron of the arts, knew of this, and it also heard her play piano in another situation. It was like, you know what? I like this gal. She's got spunk. I'm going to pay for her to go to Vassar. And
That's
she did.
amazing.
So
I want someone like that to notice me and be like, I'm going to be a patron of your artistic endeavors.
I want that for you.
If any art patrons are listening,
you're available. You're available for their patronage.
I'm available for patronage at this time.
All right. So Edna does go to Vassar, and guess what? She hates it because she's like freewheeling and fun, and Vassar is not that.
Yeah, I feel like what I've heard from Vassar of this time period is like very organized.
Yes. Yeah, and she was not about that. So, the faculty's getting fed up with her. In her senior year, they're like, let's bounce this chick. We don't like this. It's not working for us. And her classmates like rose up and had this petition, and they were like, no, she stays. And they were like, whatever, she's a senior.
That's
and so
really
she graduated.
Funny.
And that was fun. So all of that happened. So then she moves to New York, Greenwich Village and all that, starts writing in earnest. She's, an avid pacifist, but then fascism starts to rise, and, that brings things out of people. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but you're just living your life, and here comes the ugly, stupid, fat face of fascism, and you have to arise. That's what she did. And so she was like, I am a pacifist, but also the U.S. should probably enter this fight against the Axis powers. So she was a big proponent of that and remained an advocate for the war efforts throughout World War II. She died in 1950 after a series of accidents. So there was a car crash that she was in where she was like thrown out of the car.
Oh my gosh.
And like just tumbled along the road.
That's terrifying.
And so this kind of had her laid up after that. And then she fell down the stairs, broke her neck, and ultimately they say she died of a heart attack. So not a great
Falling
end.
down the stairs does feel like an Edna St. Vincent Millay thing to do.
Yeah, it's not.
Based on what I've read of her poetry.
Yeah, okay. So she died. During her lifetime, she released several collections of poetry, and we actually have quite a few
We do.
in our collection. I was surprised to see as many as we have. I think that the David A. Howe collection must have been a donation because our copy of Wine from These Grapes has an inscription in the front of it that says Helen D. Painter, Christmas, 1934, and which is before the library was even built. So
Right.
this was probably a donation when the library was built. They were like, hey, take these for your new library, because we have quite a few of them, and they are all the same style, same vintage. It feels to me like
Those are the
same
ones that
collection.
the Willard J. Houghton has as well.
Oh, really?
That same style.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. So anyway, she released several collections of poetry. She also wrote several plays, one acts and things, and the libretto for the opera musical The King's Henchman. So pretty prolific career, and in the aftermath of her life, I think was seen as more of a feminist icon than maybe she was during her time. And that comes out in the poetry as well. I mean, she talks about just like leaving husbands in the middle of the night, and her bisexuality also creeps into some of the poems, which, pretty radical for the 30s and 40s when she's writing. So yeah, it was an interesting read, and I have to say that I quite enjoyed it. And
Yay!
when you assign me these things, I'm always like, darn it.
It's like, this is what I get for
Fine.
having a podcast with this weird little nerd.
No, I did. I'm always delighted when I read things of this vintage or this era that kind of a snarkiness comes through, because they don't often associate that with that time. It's one of the reasons why I like Catcher in the Rye so much, because he's just like such a brat and a jerk. And not that she's a brat or a jerk, but I think that there is there's an attitude that comes out, not in all of them, but just sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's a certain just like unbotheredness about certain things that I feel like that she's like, well, this is how I feel. Too bad.
Yeah, I know. I just feel like she has a lot of poems that are kind of like, yeah, the sunrise was so beautiful this morning. Everything still sucks, but I liked that sunrise. Bye. There's a lot of the poems that I think that kind of strike that chord, and that speaks to my cynical soul.
Yeah, that's fair. One of my favorites of hers is, I think it's the first one in 2nd April. I think it's called Spring.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That one is so good. Just like the juxtaposition of like, she's talking about like flowers and like lilacs, and she's like, but also dead men, their brains are rotting in the ground, and that's probably fertilizing the flowers. And she's kind of like, April, you're coming back and you're trying to make me happy, but it's not going to work. I'm upset.
Yeah.
And
it's quite a challenge you have, April,
oh man,
trying to turn this frown
I
upside
think
down.
that poem is just incredible. I don't know if it's her best, but it is certainly the one that fascinates me the most.
Yeah. Well, any of those that I came across where that little like, there's a sense of irony in some of them, but there's also, there is cynicism, and there is just sort of like just kind of throwing caution to the wind, It's just kind of like, like you said, this is how I feel, and that's it. Poem over. I was less interested in the more epic ones, the longer.
I'm not as into those either.
Or the
I will
sonnets.
admit.
I was kind of like, okay.
Yeah,
fine,
some of the sonnets are really good, but like, I feel like sometimes looking at a sonnet feels a little overwhelming because it's just like a block.
Yeah, true.
And sometimes I'm like, whew, okay.
Yeah.
But some of them are good. But sometimes when I'm like looking at the little sonnet section, because usually that's like at the end of the collection, I'm like, okay, am I going to read all of these sonnets?
Yeah.
We'll see. But she has one sonnet that I think it might be from A Few Figs from Thistles. I'm not sure. But she's like, oh, you're beautiful, but you're not as beautiful as like this flower. I've seen other things that are more beautiful. And there's a bit at the end where she's basically like, yeah, like if I don't look at you too closely, whatever, I can kind of handle how beautiful you are.
Yeah.
And she compares it to like gradually building up a resistance to poison. And I think that's just incredible.
Yeah.
So some of the sonnets, there are some good ones in there, but it can feel a little overwhelming to just look at a whole bunch of sonnets, especially because they don't usually have like titles. It's just like a sonnet, and
Yep.
I'm like, what am I supposed to expect from
You
this?
understand it to win it. Yeah, it's funny. So I read these, over the course of the last month or so since I've had this assignment. So I read a couple like in the car when we were driving, or just I was at home like reading them quietly, and I would like chuckle or something, and my wife was like, I think you like these poems. And I was like, I guess so. I don't know.
It happened.
It's not. I mean, you can go back into the All the Book Show or the House Things archives, and we've done poetry episodes like most of the years that the library's had a podcast. And I usually do enjoy what I read. Like it's. I don't know that there's ever been a time when I've just like strolled down to the shelves and been like, I'm going to read this book of poetry. But yeah, when I have to, I do tend to find something I like in it, which is why I always appreciate, Poetry Month or April, because it forces me to.
It's a good time to like
do a little something.
Yeah.
I
know. I do like in general when there's like a themed month and it's like, this is a good time to read something I might not normally read. Like,
I do need those little things.
I know. Although sometimes I'm like, I choose a book, but then I start it late in the month and then I'm still reading it in the next month and I'm trying to read the next month. And then, oh man, I get behind.
I don't remember if we just talked about it IRL or if we talked about it on the podcast, but this month for Poetry Month, I checked out Jack Kerouac's book of haikus. And it was pretty fun. And I had my son read some aloud, and he was just like laughing hysterically at mostly the ones that were slightly naughty.
That's funny.
But that was my pick for this month.
Have we talked about my bad attitude about Jack Kerouac?
No, but I mean, I've read On the Road, and I think it sucks. So,
no, that's exactly. That's pretty much the entirety of me.
Yeah.
I have not actually read any of his haikus, and I have this feeling that I would like them a lot more than On the Road.
Oh, sure.
So maybe I should try that.
On the Road is
miserable.
Like... It is.
It's like everyone's having a bad time,
right.
And there's no meaning.
Yeah. Do you want to hear about unlikable people having a terrible vacation? On the Road.
Right? Oh, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely
brutal. Yeah, I would say don't let that turn you off entirely. The haikus were fun,
well,
and it's definitely the kind of book you want to pick up and just read sections from. You know what I mean? You don't want to sit there and read 500 haikus. You go crazy.
Sure.
Tell me some of your other favorites. I did compile a list of ones that I've liked best over the years.
Ooh.
So, do you got a couple that you want to share? Collections or poets, whatever.
Good question. Collections or poets?
All right, I'll tell you mine first while you're thinking.
Sounds good.
I do love a good novel in verse.
Okay.
And we've covered quite a few of those over the years. Malik and I did Me Moth a few years back, and that was really good. We've done quite a few by Kwame Alexander, the Poet X. The one that really stands out to me, though, was a Kwame Alexander, and it's Rebound. It's like a prequel to The Crossover, which was a huge phenomenon when it came out. And Rebound, I feel like, didn't do the same business that Crossover did, but I actually liked it better. I think that it's more developed narratively. I just think there's more going on. That one really... that was like a 5-star read for me. So that's probably one I'd put at the top of the list here. I read a collection a few years back called When Green Becomes Tomatoes. That's by Julie Fogliano. I like that quite a bit. I tend to like ones that are simple, everyday, or nature kind of things, which is why I like so many of these Edna St. Vincent Millay ones. But it's a local poet named James Zoller who's done some readings here over the years. He has an older collection called Simple Clutter. And I like that one because it really is, it feels like, somebody just kind of stumbled around at a house being like, look at that watermelon rind, and then writing a poem about it. Just like, I liked the simplicity of that because in that simplicity, I think he was able to tease out some, kind of complex thoughts. Mm-hmm. So I like that quite a bit. Malik introduced us to one called Love Poems for Married People by John Kenny, and it's pretty funny. Like, I've been married just about 20 years now, and like reading that, there was a lot. I was like, yeah, that's true. That's real. So I like that quite a bit. And then one I picked up a few years back during Poetry Month was just because I liked the title. It was called Coins and Coffins. It's by Diane Wakoski. Didn't know anything about her. I just, like I said, liked I think I pulled it for a display and was like, I like the vibe of this. And so, yeah, that rounds out my list of 5. Did I buy you enough time to?
I think so.
Hit me. All right.
So I don't have so much collections as like certain poets.
That's fine.
So I also really like the poetry of T.S. Eliot. That's definitely up there.
The musical Cats. This is what, the movie musical Cats is what you're saying.
I feel I've been misinterpreted here, but I feel like T.S. Eliot's poetry has a lot of that similar kind of like juxtaposition and like puzzlingness to it as Edna St. Vincent Millay that I really enjoy. And I feel like if you liked Edna St. Vincent Millay, I feel like there's a chance you could also like T.S. Eliot. Okay. That's how I feel in my head.
All right. T.S. Eliot.
I also really enjoy some of the poetry of Sylvia Plath.
Okay.
And also Wendell Berry. I haven't actually read any of his fiction, which I feel like is what most people read.
Gotcha.
If they're going to read Wendell Berry.
Okay.
But I've read quite a few of his poems that I've really liked. I have a Vikram Seth collection of poetry that I can't remember the title of, but it has like a really beautiful sunset on the cover.
Okay.
That's also a favorite.
This is like when people come in and they were like, I just checked out this
I
book.
know.
There was like a rainbow on it.
It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
There's a Philip Larkin poem that I really like called The Trees. You know, I feel like a lot of the poems that I like have a little bit of that weird edge to them.
Yeah.
This is revealing some
That
things
makes
to
sense.
me
I
about
think
myself.
you have a weird edge to you.
That's true. But yeah,
makes sense.
so those are some of my favorites.
It sounds good. So we do have the Edna St. Vincent Millay books on display on the But Have You Tried bookshelf. The bottom shelf is our upcoming topic. The top shelf is our current topic. And the middle is the things from the bookshelf. I will say nobody has checked any of them out.
Well, they don't look very
No, they
exciting.
look terrible. There's nothing on the cover. There's
Unless
nothing to
you're
look
like,
at.
ooh, I want to be old school and artsy. Like,
Right. So you're people.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
But we do have them, is my point. We have a huge poetry collection both upstairs and down in the stacks. And if you go to the library's YouTube page, we have a playlist of the poetry episodes we've done over the years that you can look there too, as well as poetry from staff. Malika's done some. Daphne O'Kelly also has some poetry on there. So a lot of stuff. If you're looking for poetry, you have it right there. Allie, I know you like poetry. I know you like Edna St. Vincent Millay. But have you tried The Karate Kid?
Oh, I think I once watched maybe one of the Karate Kid movies as a child
All right.
that I don't remember, and
right.
I might not have watched all of it.
I'm going to take that as a no.
Okay.
I'm going to take that as a no. There's a new movie coming out called Karate Kid Legends,
Okay.
which I'm excited for. We're planning to go see. You don't have to go watch the new movie, but if you're in the neighborhood and you want to, that's fine.
Understandable.
But I'm going to say watch the first movie,
Okay.
the Karate Kid, Ralph Macchio and Pat Morita as Mr. Miyagi. Elizabeth Shue also in that from the Back to the Future sequels, or lots of things that she's in. I'm going to say watch the first one. I also think that you would dig the next Karate Kid, which was made in the 90s, and it's Pat Morita and Hilary Swank as a new character. I think that you would like that one.
Okay.
So I'm going to say watch Karate Kid and next Karate Kid. Look, Karate Kid 2 and 3 are a lot of fun, as is Cobra Kai. But I think your main assignment is going to be Karate Kid and next Karate Kid.
Okay.
I think you would enjoy watching the first episode of Cobra Kai as well. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
Do the first two Karate Kids give me enough context for the first episode of Cobra Kai?
The first Karate Kid will give you plenty of context.
Okay, cool.
Because the Karate Kid, his nemesis is Johnny Lawrence, who's in Cobra Kai. And Cobra Kai sort of picks up Johnny Lawrence like as an adult. You don't need to know any other information to watch that.
Cool.
As Cobra Kai goes on, it really gets deep into the lore of Karate Kid 2 and especially Karate Kid 3. But those first couple episodes are golden, and all you need to know is Johnny Lawrence was a blonde 80s villain, and what's he like as a 50-year-old man.
Well, nice.
So, all right, how do you feel about this?
I feel excited.
Okay. So the franchise is the Tight 3, the originals. Then there was an animated series, which we're going to be talking about over on This Hindorian Life. Then there was the Hilary Swank, The Next Karate Kid.
Okay.
Then there was a reboot with Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith. And now Karate Kid Legends is taking Ralph Macchio from the original and Jackie Chan from the reboot and putting those worlds together. And that's what the new one is about.
Okay.
So pretty cool overall. I'm a fan of the franchise. I think that you'll enjoy it.
I do like martial arts, so
yeah, I know.
it seems
They're
like
all
a good
listen.
chance.
If you come back and you tell me you've watched the Karate Kid trilogy, if you've watched it all, I mean, I will be delighted to talk about all of these things. Okay. All right. So 2 weeks we'll be back to talk about the other things that we're reading and watching for our bookshelf episode, and then after that we're going to be back to talk about Karate Kid. But I want to point out too that the Starlight Theater group is performing the play Clue based on the movie, which I love. That's the weekend of June 7th. And also on June 7th is our kickoff to summer event. One of our favorite events that we do. That's 11 to 1 right here at the library. So you can check out any and all of those things. But we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Absolutely.